Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the writer of Thundercats and the upcoming Terminator series Dynamite, the writer, artist, and architect of the upcoming Old Dog operations at Image, and the writer and artist of the upcoming Mystique over at Marvel. It's Declan Shalvey. Thanks for coming on, Declan.
Thanks for having me. You forgot Phases of Moon Knight. That's coming out. I was doing my newsletter the other day, and I realized I have 7 things coming out on 26th of September. I have 7 things coming out that week.
Does that include covers?
2 of them are covers. The rest is either something I've written or drawn.
Okay, so one is Old Dog Operations.
Yeah, Old Dog Operations.
Thundercats.
An issue with Thundercats is out that day. Yeah. Phases of the Moon Knight is out. Issue 2 is out that day. Old Dog Operations. Time Before Time, Volume 6 is out.
Okay.
A Deadpool team-up cover and a Star Trek Defiant cover. That's everything. Yeah, sorry. So is that 6 things? I lost count.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
You know, it's enough.
It's enough. It's enough. You know, it's funny. I actually read your newsletter late last night, and I saw the Phases of Moon Knight stuff, and I was like, this intro is long enough already. I don't need to add that.
You didn't need it, but like, that's the weird thing where like, there is so much stuff coming out that it is all important to me. It's just one thing is a little bit more important, and the other thing is a little bit more important. So those just things are just icing out something else, which is an amazing, like, if the Moon Knight thing was the only thing I had going, I'd be delighted, you know, but I'm so busy that even something as good as that is getting edged out by all the other stuff. It's ridiculous.
I also think it's funny that you have so many things going on and so many different types of things that I had to like invent a title for you. You're apparently an architect now.
Yeah, you know what? That's just pretentious enough for me to totally get on board with. So yeah, I accept it.
How is the architecture business? Are you surviving?
It's tough, man. It's tough at the architectural top. Just because it's a lot of different things. So I've often discovered that like if I lose momentum, it's very hard to get it back on something, and you lose momentum by switching projects. So if I was only writing one book, I could make a lot of headway. But I find myself like trying to get, you know, a Thundercats issue done in time for Drew, and then a Terminator script ready, and then, you know, and then I've been joking around that I realized there's somebody else need a script. Oh yeah, me. Like, I need a script. I can't draw the next issue unless I finish this. So it's a really cool problem to have. So it's stressful in that regard, in that sometimes it feels like you're not really making a whole load of progress on one thing, and it's hard to just go, could you just leave me alone? Could you leave me alone for 2 weeks so I can make headway on this, and then I'll get back to you. But what you end up doing is basically kind of stopping and kind of making sure everything's tight, rolling over nicely, and then trying to like cut out some decent drawing time. That's the hard part, is cutting out time to just draw, because there's always other stuff that needs to be done.
I mean, the other thing that you have to factor in, of course, is like before we were recording, to spoil some of your own world life things, you were just texting with your buddy Stephen Mooney about organizing going to New York Comic Con, because that's coming up next month.
Buddy is a strong word, but go on.
So talking to Mooney, planning things like that, booking flights, doing things like that, going to New York Comic Con, all these different things. That's the thing I think people forget about, is like kind of fundamentally the most important unit in a life of a creator, but really a lot of people, is time. And everything you do that is not working on that sort of thing eats away at like time you're at the drawing board, time where you're scripting, time where you're plotting, time where you're doing all these things. And not to be super dramatic, but like that is like why you have to be very conscientious about what you do. I will say I'm very proud of you. You said in your newsletter you're taking Saturdays off. Good job by you, Declan.
I mean, that's more out of it and happenstance. A friend of mine's it was his birthday, and I just kind of went, fuck it, I'll go out for some pints. I'm probably not going to have a Saturday off for the next couple of weeks, but that's just to try and get on top of things. But case in point, last night I had my dinner. I was going to get back to, like, I got to finish a script in an hour, but the pages for Terminator went online, so I needed to get those out. You know, I needed to like hop on Twitter and Instagram and post those.
Oh, like preview pages?
Yeah, the preview pages went online. I didn't know they were going online today. Got to hop on that. That takes like 10 minutes to save them all on the phone and write out your little whatever. And then that went out. And then my art dealer got onto me saying the pages look great. I'm like, I know, yeah, they do. You know, Luke Sparrow's work is amazing. And then that sparked a conversation with him about what I need to get ready for New York and, you know, stuff I need to arrange for something else and going over like somebody looking for hour, like, so that ended up probably being an hour long text or 40-minute text chat back and forth, which was eating up into my scripting time, but had to be done because that's another part of the job, is having the store stuff ready and like, all that stuff. So it's just, and I remember I was texting him, I was like, I have to do this. Like I need to check in with him, but I could also just feel like that imaginary, what's that, time thing?
Hourglass?
Yeah, hourglass. Thank you very much. I can't think of basic words.
Hilariously enough, that's the second time recently in an interview somebody had mixed up the word hourglass. So I love it. Continue. Sorry.
I don't know where I was going with egg timer. But yes, but I could feel that, like, the hours, the minutes of the evening slipping away. I'm like, I have to get this script done tonight, and I got to try to drop ink a page afterwards. So there's always something going on, and all I can do is basically plan, X amount of things to do tomorrow and try my best to get all of them done. And I won't get all of them done, but then maybe I'll move some of them to today. Like today, my plan is to ink 2.5 pages, but I had real life stuff happening for the day, and I wanted to write some pages, but I can't write pages today. I don't have time. So I'm going to try and just basically hit inking for, once we stop talking, do nothing but ink for the rest of the day and hopefully catch up on that. And then tomorrow, because I spent today not writing, I'd probably have to do a little bit of writing to catch up. So it's always, I feel like such a wanker, like as if this is the hard life. It's not, it's fine. But like, it's the cost of doing so much. Having so much cool stuff on the go means that I'm kind of hopping from one to the other. I wouldn't mind a little bit of downtime, not just to have it off, but just to like percolate for the next thing. Because like there's a couple of jobs came up and I had to turn them down. One, for time, but also two, is like I don't know enough about this franchise. I need to do research. I don't have time to do research. I don't have time to write the thing, never mind that, but I don't have the time I would need to research the thing either. So my brain span is kind of stretched a bit. But not too much. It's okay. I know if I stretch it anymore, I'd be in trouble. But where I am now is good.
Anytime somebody is overburdened, that is like a real problem, even if it is overburdened with cool things. But I suspect the answer to this is no, given the fact that you're so busy. But have you seen the TV series Slow Horses at all? It's a spy series.
I absolutely have. Yeah, I just watched the new episode there. Oh, it was great.
Oh, okay, good. Because I watched the new episode also, and there's this one scene where Gaius Baltar, what is his name, Claude Whelan, is talking with the badass Diana Taverner, and Diana Taverner, she tells him basically, she's like, you're acting like you can do these big plan things in this job, and you're acting like you can change the culture, but the job is putting out fires every single day, and that's what you do. And like, it reminds me of what you're talking about.
That's pretty good, actually. Yeah, it's weird. I watched the episode and that didn't. It's like, that's me.
You are Diana Taverner.
A lot of it is putting out fires. I mean, there's definitely some planning stuff, but then a lot of that stuff could fall by the wayside too. I would say, like, I think the Old Dog anthology coming out the same day as that other stuff is probably because I needed a little bit more time, so pushed that back. Covers I did months previously. So while it looks like that 1 week I'll have done so much that week, really it's stuff that was kind of peppered out through the last few months that just happens to come out the same day. I'm sure there'll be weeks where nothing will come out. No, that's not true. I know for a fact that actually something's coming out every week, pretty much. For a second there, I tried to be like, oh, it's not. There's not that much stuff, but there's a lot of stuff. But no, that is you can't. But that's it. You can account for the workload. You can't account for the fire putting outness. Which is a word now. You just can't see that stuff coming. What you can do is make sure you have a little bit of dead space for that stuff to not completely derail everything else. So I think I've been pretty good for that so far.
So I do want to talk about one of your specific projects, and I think that this is useful because you're having to decide between projects at this time because of time, because of interest, because of all these different things. Less about interest, more about just like, can I fit this into my day? So one of the projects that you are working on is Mystique, a miniseries you're writing and drawing at Marvel. It's by colorist Matt Hollinsworth. Is that the first time you've been colored by Matt?
Yeah. I've known Matt 15 years, and it's the first time I've ever gotten to work with him, so I'm delighted.
That's awesome. And letterer Clayton Coles, which is a heck of a team. You're quite familiar with Clayton.
He's my boy.
Yep. And it debuts on October 16th. Here's the solicit. How do you track a subject with a history that contradicts itself? How do you stop a force whose motives change like Quicksilver? How do you stop a target that can be anyone? That's the question that confronts Nick Fury as he stumbles upon a web of lies and espionage leading back to Mystique. From the ashes of Krakoa, the shape-shifting mutant terrorist returns to remind the world exactly why it hates and fears her. We'll get into the specifics of this project and the story behind it in a second, but I want to start with that why. You have a lot of options. Why was Mystique something you wanted to do?
Well, I didn't pitch Marvel, hey, can I do Mystique? When the news came out that Tom Brevoort was taking over the X-Men line, I was like, will I be that needy guy that emails him? I want to be someone who's approached, I want to be the fancy girl that's asked out on a date. But sometimes if you want something, you should just, make an actual effort. So I emailed Tom just saying, and I was finishing Alien and I wanted to have another writing job to replace it because I was enjoying the process and I wanted to do some more. So I reached out to Tom about the possibility of writing an X-Men book, and he was really cool about it, and he's asked what I was interested in, and I told him the type of stuff I'd like to do. And then he came back with some options of books that they were developing, and one of those was Mystique. And there was another one I was into, writing-wise, but I had this big conversation with Darren Shan, the editor I was dealing with, and I was very adamant that if it's an X-Men book, it needs to be cool. The art needs to be cool. An Avengers title doesn't need cool art. It needs proper superhero stuff. But X-Men, it's got to be cool. Like Pachallo, Immonen, the Kuberts. There's such a history of cool art. And Darren said, well, there is one person who's really cool that could do that job. I'm like, who? He's like, Declan Shalvey. I was like, you son of a... He appealed to my ego and he absolutely succeeded.
Yeah.
I was like, damn it, you're complimenting me and I gotta take this job now. So it was, and I hadn't heard about it, but it was a friend of mine, his name Stockman, told me, you should do Mystique. And I said, why? And he said, because you can draw whoever you like.
Yeah.
And that was it. So it wasn't a highfalutin, I've got a take on this character that's going to be amazing. And I'm the one who's got something to say about Mystique. It was like, I could draw whoever I want. And you know what? I think that's a good enough reason.
I did want to comment on the you can draw whoever you want thing. I actually had this weird lightning bolt of a thought at 3 a.m. I was like, I got to email myself this. I wrote down 3 words: walking guest star. And it's funny because I was going to ask you, are there any specific characters you want to feature in this? And then I realized because it's Mystique, you can feature anyone. And that is actually kind of a nice hook to it from an artist standpoint and a storytelling standpoint.
Well, also because it's it also differentiates it from the Brian K. Vaughan run with
I remember the covers. I don't remember who did the art on that.
Yeah, same. And because that was a pretty seminal run on a character, and it was a spy book as well. So basically, can you do what Brian K. Vaughan did, but not too crap? Is kind of how I looked at it. But I think being a cartoonist means I'm approaching the book a little bit differently than, say, having a writing concept and trying to sound smart. I definitely had an approach, and I've been doing my own book, Old Dog, for the last year, and I feel like the super espionage world is very much in my zone. So basically, I thought that was originally, it was a reason I was thinking I shouldn't do Mystique, because I'm like, is it not just bad if I do a kind of very similar book at Marvel? But then I thought, no, actually, maybe it's a very smart thing to do. Maybe it'll help you create your own book. And also, Old Dog was made because I wanted to do something like that at the Marvel Universe. I wanted to do a kind of a S.H.I.E.L.D.-esque book. But I never pitched it because I was like, I don't know if will Marvel go for it. Now I'm coming around the other end, having done that book at Image, and now I actually am doing that book at Marvel, which is kind of funny. But yeah, there was an element of I think Maverick appears in issue 1. It's actually Maverick, so I had to ask, is he being used? Because that's the problem, is you'll ask for a mutant you want to use, and you'll find out he's being used in all the other books, he or she. So but that was fine. And then after that, there's 1 or 2 characters I had to check, but otherwise, I could draw Sabretooth, I can draw Gambit, I can draw Wolverine, because it's not a continuity thing. It's just Mystique can turn into whoever she wants. So I kind of decided to embrace that. And I think it's kind of made the book a little bit more fun too.
Well, and it ties in nicely. It's hand in glove with the spy-fi idea, where it's how do you get into places that no one else can get into? Become the person that can get in there. All of a sudden, boom. It's if you need to become Nick Fury, you become Nick Fury. I do want to say that Civil War II choosing sides Nick Fury series that you did, the one that was in the anthology, I don't want to say that really set you on a path, but it is kind of funny. That kind of feels like the proto book for a lot of the stuff you've done since then.
It's a good point, actually. Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably the thing people know the least, because it was an anthology spin-off thing. But yeah, no, I think it did, and it definitely. I think it's the first thing I wrote and drew properly.
Hmm.
So it set a tone for what I like. It is that kind of espionage part of the Marvel universe, which I like because you can get to do kind of the moody crime stuff mixed with the fun superhero stuff. So it's just the right vein for me. But yeah, you're right, because like I've kind of I've returned back to the character. Like Nick Fury is the other like main character of the book. So it's funny that it's worked out that way. I'm getting to go back and like use the suit that I designed for that run. So it feels a little bit like I'm building on top of something that I already seeded a few years ago. Not directly, story wise, but that's pretty cool. Like to not feel like you actually have a bit of a you've done something that's left a mark, or that's something you can kind of come back to and build on. That's not something I was expecting.
And you got to design a new Shield logo.
Yes, yeah, I don't know if anyone knows, but yeah, there's because Shield are a new setup because of what's happening in Fantastic Four. They're more of a kind of a streamlined organization, so it's not all like the traditional suits and whatnot. So it wasn't me. I think it was Tom Brevoort suggested a new logo, to which I freaked out because I'm like, who gets to do that? How many Shield logos have there been? Like 3?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was pretty cool, and it wasn't that difficult to process. Yeah, that's pretty badass. I mean, who knows how long that'll be around? I mean, maybe 1 year. Who knows?
I mean, Shield has been around since what, like the 60s? And there's been let's say roughly 3 logos. It could be around for a while.
It could be, but it could also be taken away in 6 months. So you never know you don't know what will stick around and what doesn't. But no, that's fun. Not everybody gets to do that, so that was pretty cool.
So I want to talk about a couple things that you said involving what Darren Shan was talking about. But before we get into that, I do want to talk about the cool versus good thing, because I think that's an interesting distinction. Why do you think that is? Like, why is it just the artists who have worked on X-Men that kind of establish it as like the one that needs cool art? Or is it something more? Like, what leads you to think there's that cool versus good divide on between X-Men and Avengers?
It's a good question. I think it's because mutants are the outsiders. Now, arguably, maybe it's the way I was raised, but or what I digested when I was growing up. But George Perez doing Avengers, as opposed to Chris Bachalo doing Generation X. So maybe it's a bias I built, but I have always felt that like the X-Men, they're on their best when they're on their back foot, and they've always been, I feel, more connected to the zeitgeist and on the pulse of what's new and interesting.
Well, I mean, think about just the 90s. You got Jim Lee leading into Andy Kubert, leading into, Andy and Adam was making a big deal on Wolverine, leading into Joe Madureira and Chris Pachalo, leading into
Carlos Pacheco.
Yeah, Carlos Pacheco.
I'd say Carlos Pacheco his style kind of streamlined and got like cleaner by the time he did things like Avengers and whatnot. It's not a criticism, just an observation. But his X-Men stuff was still a little bit kind of funkier, for lack of a better word. So it always just felt like the X-Men books were doing something that was just a little bit kind of closer to the bone than being a like more traditional superhero book. Now that was the 90s, so maybe everything's changed since then, and I'm totally like just talking out of my arse. But I just kind of feel it's a quality you need, and the X-Men books that are kind of cleaner have appealed less to me. Like there's someone like Pepe Larraz who, like, I wouldn't say he's not clean, but like he's so interesting and dynamic. Like that's what I liked about when the Hickman stuff launched with him, was like, man, this is X-Men. This is the best X-Men in ages for me, because it's like great story, what they were doing with the design stuff, and like Pepe Larraz's work just being so like he's been around for years, but when you put him on X-Men, all of a sudden the book just lit up again.
Yeah,
I do think that's a strange X factor that those books need.
Ooh, I like it.
I know, just thought of that.
That's crazy.
Just came right out of my head.
This is why you're a writer these days. You got all the good ideas. But going back to what Darren was saying, the way he like pitched you on doing it, was there any part of you that was like, I don't know if I can do this? Or was the idea of writing and drawing your own X-Men book just too appealing to, like, you're just like, I have to find space?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I knew I needed a break on Old Dog, but then that kind of got filled in. I did basically a backup story on Alien, which was a nice work for hire thing. I was already writing the book, so that was fun. And I knew, there was talking about doing an X-Men thing. I mean, in a way, I guess I could have done any book. But, the stuff that was pushed my way, I wasn't really interested in any of it other than like 2 different projects. And I think one I would have liked to write and not draw. But Mystique was one I'm like, no, I could write and draw that. Like it's writing wise, I would like to do that. And two, drawing wise, I could just, there's more potential for fun from an art point of view on that book than the others.
If I remember correctly, like this was when you were first emailing Tom, it was either like late last year or early this year. And I remember you were just kind of throwing your hat in the ring. When he came back to you with Mystique, were there parameters of what that was? Was it like, this is a spy book, or is it just like, this is Mystique, you do your thing? Like, what did it all start with?
Pretty much, it was basically a Mystique spy book. That was the general premise. And I think it was, I can't remember if it was Tom or Darren who suggested Nick Fury being involved. So that wasn't my idea.
But one you're not against.
No, not at all. Like again, like I've been feel like I've been saying this a lot recently. Like I don't mind some limitations. You know, I don't mind suggestions. It's only if I don't like it and have to do it that would be a problem. But when it was Nick Fury was, like I said, I'd already done a kind of a Nick Fury story, so I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I can do that. I liked drawing him. It was a suit I designed as well, so it all kind of worked out nicely. But the parameters, there was no real story parameters. There was nothing that like needed to be done. A lot of the stuff was in the air, so like I didn't really know what was happening. Like I'm in the X-Men chain, so I see all the stuff kind of being popped around. But I saw the advantage of doing a book within all the From the Ashes stuff, but like not directly affected by it, which is fun. Like I'm this is again a pretentious thing, but I kind of wanted to do a Vision, the Tom King Get Around His Walter Vision. Like I wanted to do that book in this line, which again is very pretentious, but I am who I am.
I don't think that's pretentious. Basically, what you're saying is you want to do a standalone story that fits the character to a T, and it's like one you can kind of point people to.
Yeah, I didn't want to do something that was going to trip all over the current continuity.
Yeah,
because I think that gets dated very quickly. But at the same time, I wanted it to work. It fits within it and does its own story, and it be a story about Mystique. If it was a Team X-Men book, that would be a whole other challenge. But I had the option of going, no, I can just do this story that fits within everything else, and it's not going to be like there's nothing happening in the other X-Men books that gets in the way of this story. So when you're doing something like say with Thundercats, where we're planning this kind of much larger universe, and you realize the freedom you have because I can just use any characters I want because I'm the one who's been writing the book.
Right.
If I was to work on say X Factor and I wanted to use Polaris, you got to check, you got to go up, you got to work out where is she right now? Is she dead? Is she alive? If she got one arm or seven heads, stuff like that, could become an issue. So I'm very lucky that I'm getting to do a book within this universe that isn't getting in the way of anything I'd like to do. And again, I'm not criticizing any of the books. That was just a concern I had. I'm like, I don't want to get trapped into like the suggestion Nick Fury, fine, but like, can it tie into this book? I'm like, I don't really know if I'd want to do that necessarily, but it wasn't. That's not something that came up.
I'm interested in this Polaris with one arm and seven heads. It sounds pretty interesting. But
yeah, once I don't know Mystique, I'll pitch that.
All right, I like it. I do think that that's one thing that seems really appealing about this Mystique book is I know that the whole time they've been saying with From the Ashes, it's like you can read these in isolation. Like you don't have to do that. With this one, it really feels like it because it really just seems like this is a Mystique book existing in the Marvel universe, and like things may show up, but it doesn't seem like you are voluntold to fit this into the larger X-Men line.
Like, I mean, I'm not sure I have to say, and it's a credit to Tom's approach with the line is that like, and even look, we're doing that with Thundercats too. It'll be very easy to just try and cash in on the crossover stuff, like, and just because that's what everybody goes for. But I feel like he has been letting all these books be their own flavors. I think I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure he said that publicly, but like, if you may not be if you're reading Mystique, maybe you'll be into Psylocke too, or you'll be into X Factor, but maybe not NYX or whatever. You don't have to read everything, which is good. I think it's healthy. Even as X-Men fans, like I don't want to read all the books. There's a lot of them, but there's definitely books I'm more interested in reading than others. I think it's healthier. I hope it pays off in that way because I think it's a better way to get readers who actually want to read the books that they're putting out.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. In the borderlands between imagination and reality, between horror and fantasy, between life and death, you'll find The Autumn Kingdom #1 on sale this September from Oni Press. For From master storyteller Colin Bunn and visionary artist Christopher Mitten, follow one family's labyrinthine descent through a perilous forest where the local folklore is anything but a myth. This fall, a dark and enchanting new breed of fairy tale takes hold in the Autumn Kingdom #1, on sale now in comic shops everywhere. And now, back to the show. So one thing I want to ask about Mystique is she is a very interesting character to tackle coming off of Krakoa, because there weren't many characters who have had a bigger spotlight during Krakoa, and there weren't many who had bigger official changes than Raven. I mean, between having her vows with Destiny renewed and her like key role on like the Quiet Council and the official reveal that she's Nightcrawler's father with Destiny as her mother, I know it's more of a straight action / spy story, but did that all factor into this series, or is it more just laser focused on the spy story?
The latter.
Yeah.
I don't care about the other stuff. I just don't care. When the Mystique book was announced, I had a lot of people on my Instagram feed complaining about like stuff that's done before. I don't care. I didn't do that. It's nothing to do with me.
Well, you're just telling a story.
Yeah, I'm going to take the character and do a story I'm interested in doing. And in a way, I guess you could say the book is the antithesis to everything you just mentioned. I don't want to say, I don't want to give away, but like, I think there's too much about Mystique. It makes sense. She's been around for so long. She's been like connected to like basically the very beginning of X-Men, practically.
I read an interview that you did where you said something along the lines of, I want you to read this series and know less about Mystique at the end of it.
Yeah. We all know these characters that are very mysterious, like Wolverine or whatnot. And, once you kind of, peel back so much, they kind of lose that. I think I wrote something the other day. I want to put the mystery back into Mystique.
You could just say the Mystique back in Mystique. Mystique means the same thing.
Yeah, it doesn't. Well, what I said doesn't sound that smart either. but no, that's like I'm not. As a reader, I don't. Like, I'm not going to contradict anything, but I'm also not going to like get into stuff from before. I'm not interested in. I'm telling a different story, so that's the one I'm interested in. It does definitely have a strong element about her past and people that she loves, but I can't really say more without giving things away.
I mean, it seems to me that what you're saying is basically like it's 5 issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got 5 issues. Basically what you're saying is like you can't be everything to everyone, so you're just focusing it on the story at hand. I'm
trying to tell a streamlined, interesting action drama story that says a lot about this character without, I don't think, like I said, it's not 20 issues, it's going to be tight, but I kind of want to take her up and just dust her off a bit and like just tell a fun, interesting story that'll just be fun to read. I'm not a big lore guy, so I'm not looking to like like she'll never be the same again. I'm not really interested in that. Like, I just want to do something that's like big bombastic, crowd pleasing action series.
I do think it's funny how you've kind of become this spy-fi guy. I'm not sure if that was your plan, but it's just kind of happened to some degree.
Nah, just, to make plans, God laughs. Like, I don't, there's some things I couldn't plan, but other things, like, for example, this year I knew was going to be Mystique, and I knew I would do my Old Dog anthology to have something coming out. So that was my plan for this year. The end of last year, I was contacted about this little thing called Thundercats. So I was like, hey, yeah, that'll be fun. That'll be a fun gig. I was not expecting what happened in the last year. So case in point, I thought I was like, yeah, I'm going to do my mainstream year of like Marvel stuff and, slowly kind of chip away on my creator own thing. And instead it's just been like, it's been 90% work for hire stuff across 3 different books.
Yeah.
I could not have planned that.
I think it's funny. This is just really speaks to like 2024 and just kind of where our minds are at. But I feel like you've been writing Thundercats for like 5 years.
Yeah, it feels like it.
Yeah, and then I remember that I got you a Thundercats shirt when I was in Portland in January, and that was right around when you first started it. And I'm like, oh my God, that was this year? That feels like so long ago. It feels like you've been like, I don't know, embedded in the Thundercats world for a million years. But I did want to talk about Old Dog next. It is your Image series, Old Dog, and it has an upcoming anthology one-shot, famously coming out on September 26th, I hear. Old Dog Operations is its name. It's you writing and drawing a story along with a bunch of creators like Charles Soule, Leonardo Romero, Matthias Bergara, Alex Packnadel, and more, telling stories set in Old Dog's world, which, if you haven't read Old Dog, is about a former CIA agent, Jack Lynch, whose final mission goes very wrong and gives him powers and sets him on a different path with a resurgent spy career and a new minder / teammate who may have a connection with him. amongst other things. There's a lot of things this book is about. So Operations is coming out the week after this podcast goes up. You have a lot of things cooking and a lot of things taking you away from your big solo creator-owned project in Old Dog. Why did you want to do Operations? Was it really just making sure it's kind of like the George Costanza by Menon thing where you want people to remember you and remember that book? Is that kind of what it was?
I remember. No, I always wanted to do an anthology. I'd had an idea to do an anthology for a long time, outside of Old Dog. And then once I knew I was going to be doing Mystique, I'm like, that's a year off the book, a year and a bit. And it's tough with creator owned because you're trying to get people on board a new idea. And, you don't want the reader to feel like you've abandoned the thing that like they took a chance on. But also there's very practical reasons why like I couldn't keep going on it. I needed one, I was burnt out. I wrote, drew, designed every issue, colored it all. Like I was just really, really I just needed a break. And doing work for hire is great because you can just kind of sit down and just like make the thing and you don't need to worry about selling it or promoting it necessarily. So I wanted to have something come out that readers of the book would, not breadcrumbs necessarily, but just something to tide them over because it's going to be another 6 months, 2 years before the next thing comes out. So I didn't want it to be I didn't want it to be 3 years. I wanted to be something. So that was one. Two, I realized, well, if I did an anthology, I could just actually have a lot of stories that build up the mission and count for Jack. Because I did 6 issues of Old Dog because I wanted there to be 5 missions and the final issue, not 4 missions and the final issue, because I didn't feel like that's a lot of spy action. In a season of TV, you've got like 22 episodes to do all your spy stuff. So I felt like I needed 6 issues at least. The anthology is a nice way of just kind of informing more of a mission history for the character. Like I said, I want to do an anthology, and I had the power to like I can't put together a Moon Knight anthology. Where I ask all my favorite. I don't know that character. I finally have Old Dog, something I own, something is completely me. It's not that it would be a problem, but if I asked Rory, hey, should we do a Time Before Time anthology or something? Other people are involved. This is my thing. I can do whatever I want. And this was an opportunity to do that. And not only could I write a story for Matthias Bergara, what the hell? Like, who gets to do that other than Cy Spurrier? Nobody. That's who. I got to color a Chris Sprouse story. Who does that? Like, it just opened up all these fun comic making possibilities. It was a hell of a lot of work. I burnt out from that. I was just burnt out no matter what I'm doing with Old Dog. And I also saw it as an opportunity to test a format change because I don't think I can keep doing Old Dog as single issues to trade. So I wanted to see what a kind of a thicker comic format might do in the market. So it was a mix of various things basically that all kind of I felt was worth trying all that stuff out. It was fairly low risk for me. I paid everybody. I drew 8 pages of my own. If the book didn't do well, I'd still live. It'd be fine. It was a good low risk way to test things out too.
Well, and that's the nice thing about all the for hire work is it kind of forms the foundation that allows you to do things like this, where you got to do the things you really want to do. And I do want to note, Old Dog fits the anthology format very nicely in a way that, like, Time Before Time was a single narrative about a group of characters. Granted, you did do like the kind of one shots in between the arcs and stuff like that, but those were you and Rory and an artist, typically often you, doing those one shots in there. And so there wasn't as much room to do other things. Old Dog, it's like, you're right. It's like, what would an anthology look like? I was wondering, I was like, what would it be? Would it be about side characters? I stupidly did not even think about the fact that it would just be other missions Jack did, because there's plenty of room for that because he's been doing other missions.
Well, look, and you know what? Sometimes the funny thing is, I mean, that was my feeling behind it, but I didn't have a tight brief for everybody. I just had a general missions, like, give me some kind of like missions. But that's not what everybody did. Summy did this kind of interesting kind of like dream sequence for a retriever, and I will say this because it's funny. Rory McConville and Dave O'Sullivan did a story, and Rory wrote a story about 2 different agents, not Jack. And Dave O'Sullivan was like, he did a great job, but at the end he was like, yeah, I kind of really wanted to draw Jack Lynch. When I got to do it like in one panel, and afterwards Rory was like, "Yeah, I probably should have done that," but I didn't push for him to do it because I'm like, seeing these two. This is a cool. This builds the world out a little bit, a little tiny bit. Maybe I'll use one of those characters down the line. That's a fun thing to have. Again, it's a little bit of development work that I didn't have to do, that I can pick and choose what I want to work with, and also sometimes seeing something a little bit different on the thing that you've only been doing, kind of, it might be thing I was like, I don't really want to do that, or that's a cool idea. I could do more of that. So it's, being isolated on that book on my own was good. But having a little bit of an experience where you're seeing some other flavors, it's not bad either.
Well, and getting to see what other people are interested in this world, it might open doors for you. It's like, I don't know, like those two, like you said, those two characters, maybe you use one of them down the line, or like maybe somebody unlocks a side of something. You're like, I can use that.
Or maybe Leonardo Romero draws an amazing 6-page like fights, like action sequence, like who doesn't. That was the cool thing. It was like, I'd love to see what he would do with this. And you ask, and they say, I can't do it, sorry. And you're like, God damn it. And then you ask somebody else. But no, Leonardo was like my one, like I definitely wanted.
He's amazing.
It's incredible. Like, so I get to have pages that drawn by Leonardo Romero. Matthias Bergara gave me his pages. I have 6 pages of Matthias Bergara.
Oh my God. If you sell those, you can just retire.
So, yeah, don't tell him. But that's the fun stuff of comics. A lot of the time is just getting to kind of, with Alien, I got to draw and color some of it because we needed another artist, and I didn't want to take away from what Andrea was doing. But that's a rare example of a work for hire opportunity where you can kind of he did a cover and I colored it. I asked the editor if I could color it, so I got to color his cover for Alien. To jam on stuff like that is really, really cool. It's a lot harder to do in the work for hire space, but with look with them, I got Drew Moss, the Thundercats artist, to do cover, and I colored it. Like that's what I like. I got to write something. I got to kind of edit it all. I got to draw some of it. I got to color some of it. That's fun for me, I like getting stuck in with that type of stuff. It's stupid. I shouldn't do it. It takes way too much work, but I can't. Look, I clearly can't do it myself.
I love the fact that you're so overburdened. You're like, I'm going to take on a project where I'm going to take on like 9 roles.
Yeah. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I thought, like, look, I just need to write a couple of stories and do my own, and then Heather will take care of the rest. But I wouldn't really let her because I wanted to make all the kind of creative decisions. I wanted to make sure that there wasn't the same colorist doing two. I didn't want to treat colorists like you can just color the whatever stories. I wanted to like particularly match them. Like Sophie Dodgson did great work on Stanford Green's work, and I was like, I wanted someone for Matthias who would be interesting, but I was thinking maybe Trina Farrell, but no, Trina's going to color Leonardo, so I don't want to like ask her to do two. So like some of that was stressful too, but like I wanted to be the editor of it basically, which is dumb because editing is so much work and I'm not paying myself for it, but that was it. I maintained a lot of like artistic control over it, which, I'm glad because it worked out. I'm really, really happy with the end product.
So I did want to ask about the creators. How did you figure out who you wanted to bring on to work in this world? Was it just creators you liked, creators you thought fit this world well, creators you knew? How did that crew come together?
Well, it was a mix of who do I really, really want, who might get some eyeballs on it. I'm just being totally honest here, and some unknowns. I think if there's an anthology of just big names is cool, but like, I really feel like if you're doing an anthology, you need to kind of spotlight some people. So I wanted to spotlight people who I think are great. Originally, I was thinking it would just be writer artists. That's who I'd ask because I like this kind of hot streak that writer artists are having right now. Between Daniel Warren Johnson and Daniel Warren Johnson and Daniel Warren Johnson.
They're on fire.
Yeah. But no, there are loads. There's loads doing like really going for it now. And I think it's really cool. And I was thinking I'd go for that. But what you find is a lot of really talented people are busy. So it's really hard to like nail that down. So also there's people whose work I really like Alex Packnadell and Rory, who I like. These guys are great. I want to see them. I definitely want to see an Alex Packnadell script because I think he's such a great sci-fi writer. Like, what would he do with Old Dog? I was curious. Rory, obviously, worked with on Time Before Time. I wanted to like see what he would do. Charles Soule, if I'm being honest, I asked because he's a big name and I'm friends with him, and I figured he'd do it. Not that I was like, oh, he's going to do a terrible job, but I'm like, I needed a couple of aces in the holes. that I could sell the book with. And then that would give me the liberty to like pick people who maybe wouldn't be as big or, what have you. So Leonardo Romero was top. And so was Matthews. Those are my two top guys. And I got him. I was delighted. There's a couple of people who couldn't, some people who were too busy. And, he held out for some. Charles was great. Like, he did not have to do that story at all. Like, that guy is plenty busy, but he was really, really cool and did it for me. And I wanted to pair him with Gavin Guidry, who I thought was kind of like, this guy deserves more eyeballs. But in the space of time since I asked him, and now he's doing great. So he just
he took over for Leo on Birds of Prey.
Yeah. So I'm thinking I'm gonna like help Gavin out here, but did not need my help at all. But then I found Luke Sparrow, who's like I think a tremendous talent. Who was like nobody seemed to know who he was. Now he's doing Terminator, which is great. So it was a mix of like Sumi Kesgin as well, who's like I think a fantastic cartoonist too. Not enough people know about. So it was a mix of like, are there some marketable people that like are amazing and people who I like and I'm invested in, and are there a few Hail Marys like Chris Sprouse? I met him at a convention and I asked him in person. That was a real Hail Mary because I didn't even know if he knew me at all or, so it's, some stuff worked out, some stuff didn't. But in the end, like, I think I've got that right kind of mix of known, sellable, not sellable, but like people who aren't, who are don't have any exposure, stuff that I can get dirty with, like I can jump in and write something, and opportunities for someone like Leonardo to write and draw something too. Because I think I offered Matthias, I think I asked, but he was happy to draw something, and like I was very happy to write something for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was a weird alchemy of stuff that worked and didn't work out. But I mean, if you look at any anthology, I'm sure like you'd be like, say, Batman year, what was Batman Black and White, the most probably best anthology ever made. I'm sure there's loads of people who are supposed to do stories for that couldn't, but it doesn't matter because that is so good. You couldn't imagine anybody else doing it,
I have to admit, I feel like Mark Chiarella with Batman Black and White was a pretty high hit rate. I don't think there's a lot of people like, you know what? Nah, I'm good. But I do remember, I got to give you credit when you were putting this together. I remember there was some names that you had on your list, and like I think there's like a version of this where you weren't as bold, where you weren't asking for the people that you were really hoping for, and you end up with like a less interesting creator list. But because you were willing to like hear no, that resulted in better yes, or not better yeses, but like more interesting yeses, if that makes sense. And so kudos to you.
I'm in a good place where like, a good few creators would know me like personally, so I can approach them. But like, I don't know Jim Lee like that, and I'm not going to ask him. Right, just not going to. There's some Hail Marys that you just can't do. But to be fair to Heather Antos, she did say like, look, if there's someone you'd love, just ask. I mean, they can always say no. There's no downside. There was one I would have loved a team to do, but they couldn't do it, so I just had to live with it. But like, I did swing high on a few that didn't work out, but it's fine. I'm no less happy with the book. I think if I'd missed out on one hit, I got another hit to make up for it. And there was some, I think there was somebody, there's no huge disasters. I mean, the one who was latest, there was one artist who was really ran it up to the line.
Was it Declan Shalvey?
Well, there was another one, and that was me.
Yeah.
Because I think I was wrapping up Mystique issue 1, and I had done so much work on the anthology, arranging all this stuff, doing the covers. I had it all designed, and I'm like, I still need to do my story.
Yeah.
So, but I got there in the end, thank God.
Well, and so ultimately, Old Dog Operations buys you time to like kind of get back to it next year or so.
Yeah, I'm hoping it takes the pressure off with the reader that they're getting something, and that I didn't want them to feel like I abandoned the project.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it might be coming in a new format, TBD, but we'll see what that looks like. I want to quickly talk about your work on a couple Dynamite titles in Thundercats and Terminator. We can't get too far into it, and I know you've done a lot of press on both of them, but we have to start with the former just because it somehow did happen in 2024 and it has become this crazy thing. Are you still surprised by everything that's happened with Thundercats and the reception to it? Because I remember this came together quickly for you and all of a sudden it's a sensation.
Yeah, I think the license, whatever way it worked out, is when I said yes, it's like, all right, let's get going right now. Like, we had to jump on it straight away. And I was like, these are cat people, right? I knew I knew what it was. But yeah, no, I had to hop on it fast. I thought it would be like a solid license book, I thought it might sell, I don't know, what does a general license book sell, like maybe, 40,000 copies issue 1 or something? I'm like, that'd be cool, my expectations for success were not high. They were fairly satisfactory, middle ground. I just thought it would be a cool project. The idea was to basically reintroduce the Thundercats for a new audience and an older audience. And it wasn't even that specific. It was actually, the brief was very wide. I pitched what I wanted to do, and it was totally accepted. There was really no pushback. And I thought, okay, a year on this book would be cool, where I get to like take like what I done in Alien is take a franchise and do like my quote unquote take on it, which is not really a place where I thought I'd be in my career. But I realized that seems to be exactly where I am in my career. I'm doing it with Mystique, and I'm doing it with Terminator, I'm doing it with Thundercats, and I'm kind of doing it with Moon Knight too, which is nuts. And it's amazing. But I thought, yeah, man, a year, this would be fun. And then Drew Moss was pretty much on board straight away. And I've loved Drew's stuff for ages. I'm like, this is cool. I'm going to get to write like 12 to 15 issues of a book. You don't often get that many on a work for hire monthly comic. Generally, it's over by issue 5. So knowing I had a little bit of room to tell a kind of a slightly more expansive story, I'm like, this is great. Happy with this. And the sales came in for issue 1, and I think we were on issue 3 by then, maybe, or I can't remember. But like, there was no real pressure with issue 1. I'm like, nobody cares. I just get to write a fun story. By the time I'm writing issue 3, I was freaking out a bit because I saw what the numbers were. I'm like, this is probably the most copies sold of anything I've worked on. Maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe Moon Knight was more, or Batman.
Yeah, maybe All-Star Batman. But even then, I bet Thundercats was higher.
Yeah, but that was a backup that I was drawing. This is different, So no, I felt a lot of pressure then, but I'd already started, so I'm like, look, I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to change it just because the book's selling. But it was it was a little overwhelming. But it was actually really cool to be associated with a good positive thing that was happening. Transformers had kicked off and Turtles had kicked off. All these kind of 80s properties. And, I'm not exactly sure how healthy it is that it's just the 80s stuff that's kicking off this way. I'd like other books to do as well. But at the same time, it was nice to be part of a positive thing, The book was selling. People were really, really liking it. An audience that probably never heard of me yesterday were reading my stuff and had no idea I even drew it, And that I think I embraced that. I'm like, this is cool. Like, I'm so used to doing like indie books that are really hard to sell, just by the nature of selling indie books. Whereas I just sauntered into this gig selling, thousands of copies. So no, it was really cool. And since then I've just tried to kind of like keep the North Star of like what we wanted to do with the book. And now, I mean, I don't think it's much of a secret now, but like we're building a whole Thunderverse now, as it were. And that's cool, man. Like it's like literally getting to play with the toys again. Except this time, my sister can't throw my Lino down the stairs and break his head. Still, I just can't get past it.
It's one of those haunting moments from your life you can't forget.
Yeah, I've been trying to not put it in the book. Why does Lino not have a head anymore? But it's cool. And now that the book's done so well, now instead of like a year, it's at least 2 years. So I think I remember hearing Hickman saying something about like the benefit of doing a Marvel book is that you have so much room to kind of like tell different stories and like invest in different ideas and stuff like that, rather than a new book is a new pitch and then it ends. I actually I've completely fallen arseways into an opportunity. Like I'd love to do this at Marvel, I know I'm not a big name or anything, but like that's the thing I'd love to do with Marvel. But I've happened to just fall into it at Dynamite, where there's more kind of freedom to do wild, weird stuff and own the property in a way, with doing covers and everything. So yeah, I did not see this coming at all. And I'm working on the 3rd arc right now, which is where I was going to wrap it up. But now the sky's the limit. So from a creative point of view, I have this thing I would have liked, which like that's what Time Before Time was, and initially was like, can we do a long form story, me and Rory? Because most books are minis now, and we got to do it, which is great. And now I'm getting to do it, but I don't have to like pay for it.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. The hits just keep coming on Zoop. There's still plenty of time to support campaigns from Simpsons legend Bill Morrison, The Art of Dissenter from Dustin Nguyen and Jeff Lemire, Great Pacific, the completely trashed edition from Ice Cream Man's Martin Morazzo and Joe Harris, as well as dozens of campaigns coming soon that you can sign up for launch notifications on. Most notably, campaigns from the legendary Joe Quesada, the new publisher Panic Entertainment, Monster Forge Productions, and the final release from the late Ed Pisker, Switchblade Shorties. Zoop would like to thank all the creators who have recently submitted projects and urge more creators to submit your project to Zoop. Click the Submit Your Project link at zoop.gg as they are providing services to even more creators than ever before. And now, back to the show. I do think it's interesting, though, that you kind of always wanted to have your space where you could like write like a longer story with like a for hire job. And this wasn't what you envisioned, but it's actually turned into a situation where you're kind of, I don't know, if Jonathan Hickman was the head of X, you're like the head of Cats. You're like the person running like this universe with Nate Cosby and everything. And it's interesting that that's happened, but do you think that the popularity of Thundercats has changed things at all for you? Like kind of how you're perceived as a writer? Or do you kind of see it as something that the perception is it's less about you and more about the property, if you will?
I think ultimately it's more about the property. You know, I feel like I shouldn't say this out loud because like, you know, I don't want to, talking yourself down isn't really the best thing, but like, I think that book was going to do well no matter who was on it. I'd like to think that me and Drew, like I don't know if you're like this. I imagine you are, but like, you pick up a book and it's like, this person and that person on this character. And you're like, oh, that's cool. The example I always use is Trad Moore on Ghost Rider. I remember like, I don't know what that looks like. I'd like to check that out.
Yeah.
Not like me drawing Moon Knight. You've seen it. Just use myself as an example, so I'm not having a dig at anybody else. That's not new. If I was drawing the same one as before, it's people who've read it. A lot of people want to read the thing that they know what it is. That's what most people are. I like to read something that I don't know what it is. I know I'm a little bit different that way than like say maybe most people.
I think it's the secret sauce of the Energon universe where it's like, I don't know what a Daniel Warren Johnson Transformers book looks like.
I had no idea. And you know what? It's pretty badass.
Yeah.
But I think to credit Nate, I think for coming to me, I don't think anybody would have known what that was going to look like, and I think maybe that added a level of excitement for comic readers who would have been aware of me to some degree. But ultimately, I mean, I think what it really is if I'm being honest, I think it's a lot of fans who are reading more mainstream books a few years ago that stopped because they don't like them anymore, and Thundercats gave them a reason to try comics out again.
Sure. In
that it's a thing that they know, it's a thing that they'd like. We're not doing something drastically different to the cartoon. It is definitely different, but it's not. It's if you have a rough idea what Thundercats are, you'll be able to follow it straight enough. But I think it's enough of a palate cleanser where there has been no iteration of these characters for so long that there is an older fan base that is like, oh God, I just want this thing that I remember that I liked, mixed with probably to a lesser degree a newer fandom that are like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah, I'll check it out. Because I've met those people in person, which is great. They're like, I've heard of it, but I've never actually watched it, so I thought I'd pick up the comic, which is a great thing to hear. So yeah, I can't. So has it changed everything? I mean, I'll tell you this: from the sales of Old Dog, the numbers on the Old Dog operations, not the same as the Thundercats numbers. So I don't know if it's really changed anything. I guess in a year or so, I might have a better idea if like a book like that is helping, say, Old Dog or anything else. It's hard to know. That stuff isn't going to happen overnight.
I guess less about that and more about how you're perceived by like editors for possible writing jobs, because being able to write a 5-issue miniseries is one thing. Being able to write an ongoing story where you're kind of the head of a universe feels like a different species altogether. But I did want to add one other project in your mix. You have the upcoming Terminator book, which is on final order cutoff the day this podcast goes up, so retailers get to order, and you have Thundercats and everything associated with it. You wrote a fair number of Aliens comics. I think it's funny. I mentioned you being a Spy-Fi guy. Somehow you've become this very successful writer of licensed projects, which is kind of, I don't know, surprising to me. Like, has it been surprising how well you fit into that space, even for you?
Yeah, remember when I was drawing Thunderbolts?
Yeah, yeah. I remember our first interview. I was like, "Oh, you did that really cool page with Atlas, and it was so great." And
yeah, like that's it's such a very different place to be, but like it's definitely where I want to be. Like, I ask sometimes newer people like, "What creator would you like to be like?" what career would be something you're just in. And like, I think like for me, like we're like Jason Latour was getting to write and draw stuff, and like how where Chip Sarsky is kind of like, to me, the sweet spot of getting to do licensed fun stuff and like totally invest in your own creator own stuff too. I think that's a really nice sweet spot. And I've somehow managed to kind of get in there too, which is great. Not where I thought it was going to go. I did not see myself as the James Cameron kind of licensed writer guy, but look, it's funny how things work out. I know Nate. I think Nate told me he reached out to me for Terminator because of Old Dog. He hadn't read. I thought it might have been Alien, but it wasn't.
Nate Cosby.
Yeah. So because he liked Old Dog, I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Also, to be fair, it's this one editor hiring me for this license stuff. So, if not for Nate, I probably wouldn't be doing like any license stuff. But the reason I like doing them is because Nate is good to kind of give me the space to do what I want with them. I'm not interested in really writing a licensed book, like, trademark. If the property is cool, and Thundercats was a challenge because it was a new, like, what am I going to do with this? Terminator is a little bit different because it's a way more limited in scope in what I can do with it. But
you comped it to like Quantum Leap, right? It was just like a series of
Yeah.
one shots. Yeah, which I think is fantastic.
yeah, I'm saying it's Quantum Leap from Hell is how I'm looking at it. Because again, it's not, it doesn't get into all the lore or what happens to John Connor when he's 50 or anything like that. It's way more restrained. It's way more limited. Way more pulpy. Way more action orientated, and like that's actually more my speed than Thundercats is. Thundercats is basically a kids or at all ages superhero book. That's not what I thought I would be doing, but I enjoy it. It's fun. It's fun to write something different. Terminator is a book like I could draw, like I could write and draw this. It's more my speed. It's darker. It's moodier. It's pulpier, and it's kind of the reason why I took it. Is I'm like, this feels like a very natural fit for me. It's a license, but like a license, I think like I think I can really gel with this quite easily. So, and I knew it'd be a lot of work, but I get to build a book. I like building things.
You're saying a time traveling action science fiction book fits you? That's very surprising, Declan.
Yeah, if only there were 6 volumes of a book like that. That also has a robot.
It also has a much different robot.
Yeah,
I assume so. I guess I haven't met the Terminators yet. They could be really chill.
if only.
Have you seen all the Terminator movies?
Not Genesis or Dark Fate. I haven't seen those two.
I gotta say, this is gonna probably earn some haterade towards me, but I actually like Dark Fate. Dark Fate is pretty fantastic, and it has a Kevin-like robot in it that is a Terminator.
Oh, does he?
Kind of.
Okay.
Let's just say that Arnold Schwarzenegger has an interesting job in that movie, and it's pretty hilarious. It's worth a watch,
Okay.
just because it's got some surprising stuff in it. But I do think it's funny. There's always this kind of, I don't want to say a stigma about licensed comics, but that sometimes people are just like, licensed comics.
But a lot of them are shit.
Well, okay, but I mean, here's the thing though: is like fundamentally there is very little difference between licensed comics and superhero comics. They're both for hire,
Absolutely,
and one just has an extra decision-making layer on top of it with the licensed books. And it is interesting how there is that perception. And just, I mean, to be honest, it's like some superhero comics aren't great, some are great. There's always high variance, so it's. As long as you're bringing your A game and you're finding your way into it, it doesn't really matter what for hire project you're doing if you find value in it.
True, but like we say with Terminator, I'm like, it's basically a creator book in that. Nate approached me, I'm like, cool, I want this artist and I want this colorist. Covers were up to him, but I'm like, I just want to, this is who I want to draw it, and this is who I want to color it, and this is what the book's going to be. And Nate was open to that, The same thing with Thundercats. I did not ask for Stephen Mooney on issue 5, but I did ask for Joe Mulvey on issue 10. And that's what I do like about working with Nate is he lets me have more kind of, I don't want to say control, but like I can make creative decisions. That's what I'd like to do. I don't like managing it. I don't like the editing bit of like having to schedule things and all that stuff. No. But
you like input.
I do like I like the creative input. And so in a way, it feels like I've kind of built this book that could be creator owned, except there's a Terminator in it, And I personally like when licensed stuff is a bit looser with that. It's not it's not somebody who draws photorealistic shots of the actors or whatever it is. It feels like its own thing. Like what was it? The book Sophie Campbell and Brandon
Glory,
that was it. But like that's again, you're taking a property like Liefeld was clearly like very open to doing something weird and different. And I do think that's been the way some of the better licensed stuff has gone. Like how much innovative stuff has the Turtles managed to do in their comic, and what they're doing with Transformers, like they're putting everything into making these books interesting as well, not just, farming out the content. So I think we're in a pretty good place with licensed stuff at the moment, because I think the licensors have been more flexible. I mean, definitely with Thundercats. Like I created a whole new character and they were like, yeah, cool. I thought that was going to be a whole problem.
I'm sure they love that. More new characters, please.
Now I realize why they love it, because we basically made a whole new character for it. But I wasn't thinking of it that way. I was just thinking from a story point of view. But like what we're doing with Apex next, and, stuff that you think could be a problem, they're like hands off. So, I mean, that makes for very creatively rewarding licensed projects now. And to be fair, what I said about like some licensed books being shit, it wasn't that easy to do that 10, 15 years ago. Things were a lot stricter.
Yeah. Last thing before we have a closing topic we'll get to in a second. This is not me casting aspersions about you. This is not me saying you're doing anything wrong, because God only knows you're super busy. This is just me as Declan Shalvey's fan, not as, host of this podcast. There's one thing you're missing. I kind of feel like it feels like the whole is you're not writing a creator-owned series right now. Like you had Time Before Time, or I mean, not even series, but you did Bog Bodies, you did Savage Town. It kind of feels like the first time in a while where you're kind of not writing something that's yours. That's not to downplay anything that you're doing, but I don't know. I've kind of gotten used to having one thing either in the process of coming out or in on the horizon and the creator-owned side for a while. And I don't know. Is it strange to not have something like that after kind of being concentrated on that for 5 years or so?
Can't you just be happy for me, David?
Can't you God, fine.
No, you're actually, it's interesting you say that, because that's definitely where my brain is at now. I feel like, I think maybe if I didn't take on Terminator, I would be concentrating more on a creator-owned thing. I think Old Dog was taking up that space with the anthology, because it ended up being a lot more work than I was expecting. So I think that's slowed me down there. But no, I have a concept I've been knocking around with an artist for about a year, so I want to kind of get moving on that. I won't take anything else. Now that the anthology is done, I think I can start kind of making progress on it. But I'd gone all in on creator-owned on a bad year for creator-owned. Just Time Before Time and Old Dog were my two main projects, and they did good, but not like a creator-owned book maybe 5 years ago would have done. And Alien was the side gig, which was hilarious to me that my side gig was writing a Marvel book. So it's kind of switched around now. I think I've gone all in on work for hire, not as a deliberate choice. It was in that I said I'm going to concentrate on Mystique for a year, so I'm going to do work for hire. But the other stuff popped up, so I just kind of made the most of it. And I'll take that money and I'll put it aside and I'll put it towards the creator-owned as soon as I can. But no, I'm definitely itching to get. I have it's a very limited project, but something very weird and kind of out more off the wall than what I'd normally do. I also have another Irish crime book I'd like to do, but I want to draw it. How? How am I going to do that?
Clones, time travel, both of those things.
That's it. What I'm thinking of is I'm going to do the next Old Dog, installment. But then I'm thinking can I stop and do this is a question. I'm curious what you think. If I take a break to do a work for hire thing, say Mystique, I think people understand that, because you can.
But if you go off and do another creator-owned thing within the creator-owned thing, are you kind of harming your own?
Yeah. Are you fucking around with the audience, who support you,
I mean, that is the tricky thing, because I think a lot of this comes down, or we were talking about time earlier, but, you have to balance creative needs versus creative wants. You have to balance career needs versus career wants. You have to balance all these different things. You have to balance, what do I write and what do I draw for myself? Is this an idea that I want to do both on, or is this an idea that I just want to do one on? Or am I willing to do one on? And there's always sacrifices you have to make. And it kind of reminds me of Kieran Gillen. Kieran Gillen was really hard on creator-owned for a while, and then he switched to for hire, and he was only for hire for a while. And then he switches back, and now he's doing Power Fantasy. And the book that he's doing with Stephanie Hans that I can't remember the name of right now, and I know it involves the word giants. I know that.
We were giants.
I'm looking it up right now. He literally sent an email out this morning about that. Oh, here we go. Sweet spot. We called them giants. I'm sorry, Kieran.
Oh, okay. That was close enough.
It's like bouncing back and forth. I always do the comp of like the George Clooney, one for them, one for me type thing where you're trying to do these projects. I do think that when you're switching between creator-owned books, it can muddy the market and make it a little confusing for people, and it can harm yourself. So, I mean, if you're going to lean into Old Dog, I would try to lean into Old Dog rather than jumping into other things. But at the same time, it's like you got to follow what feels right to you. So you do you, Declan.
But I mean, I definitely want to write and a creator own, but it's like I have this Irish crime thing that I just want it to be me who draws it, and it wouldn't be it'd be like a graphic novel, like an 80-page graphic novel or something. But like, is it? Yeah, that's the thing is, it's not like launching a series. It's a different beast. It's putting a different book out, which can, I think, as a reader, I'm like, oh man, cool. When someone just puts a book out and you weren't expecting that, I think that can be really cool.
Yeah.
But you've got to plan that and strategize it and whatnot. And also, yeah, like Old Dog is something I want. Old Dog is something I want to just kind of keep doing. So maybe the thing is to make it like flexible and put out like shorter installments over time rather than, trying what I did, which was like launch a proper single issue series at the time when the market wasn't too great. So like, it's like, that's what I'm more concerned. It's not necessarily like creatively, I want to do it all. It's just, there's only so many hours in the day. And I guess I'm lucky that I have an audience that does buy my creator own stuff, and I don't really want to jerk them around. But it's very hard to read because it's, what a Twitter poll is going to figure that out. Like, no, it's hard. But I mean, look, I had the luxury of being able to write stuff too. So I know what I want to do. Creator owned definitely is put out this kind of very more ambitious mini series. And, it'll be interesting to know if all the work for hire stuff will have affected sales by then. Who knows? I know creator owned stuff is in a slump at the moment, but I feel like now is the time to be starting something creator owned for whenever it is things turn around. When stuff sells really well again, that's when everyone's going to be jumping on it. But like, that's not the time to be. The time to be doing it is when that happens. So
yeah,
I'm very aware that like I feel like I need to be doing a creator owned thing, but I just haven't had the time. But I'm gonna start making the time.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I did want to bring up one last topic. We talked about it before via email that we're going to bring this up. John Cassaday, the legendary artist of comics like Planetary and Astonishing X-Men, passed away this week at the age of 52. He's somebody who, for me, like when I was I stopped reading comics in the midst of Planetary, but Planetary was one of my favorite books when it was coming out originally. Well, and throughout the entire run. But then when I got back in, like Astonishing X-Men was just starting up, and I was a huge X-Men fan. So getting into that, I was just like, holy crap. Like this guy, I mean, like there's not many people who have two like legitimately iconic series to their repertoire, and he has two there.
I was saying that to somebody earlier, like, if you're lucky, you get one.
Yeah.
Some look out, like, say, maybe Derek Robertson on Transmetropolitan and The Boys.
Yeah.
But most, you're lucky if you get one of those.
Right.
So it's amazing. And, like, then add on the Star Wars run and Uncanny Avengers and
Captain America.
The guy knocked out smashes,
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like it's amazing. Like I know he's been quieter in the last few years, but like to get even one of those will be rarefied air. Basically, it's kind of weird. You kind of forget. I kind of forgot about him the last few years, outside of some covers here and there. But yeah, I was saying my newsletter there yesterday that like I was looking over his stuff, and I realized whenever people ask me my influences, I never say him, and I'm looking over his stuff. I'm like, wow, that's me. That's me too. That's also me. Like I can see, where his stuff filtered through my brain into my own work. I definitely remember a time where I was all about him. I think I discovered Planetary near the end of it, and it blew my mind. And when like I was working with Warren on Injection, like my thing was I wanted to do my own Planetary. That was, if I could do something like that, would be amazing. And like his stuff is so like storytelling was so like. I just love the storytelling. I'm like, yeah, this is absolutely me. It's like, arguably, I'm ripping him off. I just didn't realize I was doing it, central compositions with covers, but then kind of like something completely different, and then limited color schemes, and then very ornate, kind of highly composed stuff. Those old Planetary, I mean, I don't know if he designed them, but he did the drawing for them. They're like different colors, but there's like one tall strip of artwork.
Are you talking about the covers?
Yeah, sorry, the covers. Yeah, they're older trades of Planetary. Like I'm like, that's one of the most bold designs I've ever seen for a trade paperback.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy was amazing. I didn't know him personally. I met him once at a convention in Birmingham in England, and where I had nothing to show for myself. And he was absolutely lovely and really nice. And that's always a good test for somebody if they're nice to you when you're a nobody.
Yeah.
But I know so many people who knew him really well and are really heartbroken about it. But it sucks. Like it's definitely, I guess, more than saying like JP Leon died a couple of years ago, and like that was a big shock. But like Cassaday was like he was a mainstream, like he's the voice. He's definitely an artist, an iconic artist of like our generation in both like skill and success. Like you can't really get more successful than that as an artist, really. You know?
Yeah. I just found one of those covers.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Like they're brilliant. I love that. No, I've never really seen anybody try that since. That was like 20 years ago, whatever.
I think the thing that's really amazing about him, I mean, a lot of things, like, because one of the things that is really has been really incredible to see as a result of, or, you know, in response to this is just like how many people have shared stories where, like what you're saying, where like you saw him and he was nice to you, even though you were new. It seems like he went out of his way to treat people well. And like that is, I mean, you can be a really gifted artist, but it seems like he was a really kind human in a very uncommon way. But the other thing about that has really stood out is there's two things, like the fact that did Astonishing X-Men and he did Planetary, and that's not to devalue the rest of his excellent work. He's done tons of stuff. But if you think about it, Astonishing X-Men was probably a lot of people's first Marvel comic because of like Joss Whedon and because of like this big relaunch where you start at #1. And so a lot of people kind of got into it during this, like, it was 2004. It was during a really big push for Marvel coming off of Ultimate and coming off of like Bendis was just starting out Avengers and everything like that. So it was this really big time. So he has that. But then Planetary, I wouldn't be surprised if that was a lot of people's kind of first it was DC, but you know, it was Wildstorm. So it was like not really Marvel or DC. So he's kind of like, I don't know. This is a very dramatic way to put it, but like an architect of a lot of people's, like a foundational piece of a lot of people's fandoms.
Well, I think it's something like Planetary as well because of like how it, the Ghost Cop issue.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Its own thing. And then like the next one was like this monster feature. Like he was able to, I mean, that is Warren too, to be fair, like the same experience on Moon Knight. But like it definitely like every issue he leveled up into something new and interesting. And I remember a lot of people complaining about how long it took for the book to come out. Because I remember it was coming out as issues. But I'm like, who cares? Like now we have this amazing body of work that he did and Laura Martin and I can't remember who lettered it, but it's like amazing stuff. And yeah, like the X-Men, I mean, that I think like that Astonishing X-Men run is amazing. Not only like it's very well, like Joss Whedon can write the hell out of a comic, but what like the emotion and the spectacle and like it was so cool to be an X-Men fan there. It felt like we were, getting like the cool. Actually, there's another example. Like the book was cool as hell. Huge writer, but like the artist was doing such interesting stuff. Bold, like some of the cover designs, really, really like ballsy. Like I put it right up there with some of the best X-Men stuff I ever read. I have it right here. It's one of my favorite runs ever. Who gets to do that?
I think one of the interesting things about it is like seeing what people were posting too is I hadn't really thought of his like I think of him as an interior artist first, and it was interesting to see how many people. I mean, I myself posted a cover. I posted Planetary #26, the one with the holding where Elijah Snow is holding the piece, the missing piece, and like I never really thought about how incredible he was at covers until like I saw that, because like really I think of him as a storyteller first. Like you think of that scene where Kitty Pryde is so shocked that Peter Rasputin, the Colossus, is still alive that she just stands and phases as he goes through her to go beat the shit out of some people. And like,
yeah, well, you know the story behind that, don't you? That like Joss Whedon said there was dialogue in that page, and when he saw the artwork, he's like, get rid of it.
Oh, I didn't. No.
He got rid of his own writing because the strength of that page was so, and it is. It is such a strong. I mean, I remember my heart broke when I read it. Like he definitely made stories more epic in scope,
while also making the emotions work, which is really amazing.
Yeah.
Like that's tough to do both. Like he can do the huge scale, but he also, I mean, how many people could like make a bullet phase through the earth, but also make the reaction shots work perfectly? I mean, it's very, I don't know, such a unique singular artist, and I don't know. I mean. I don't know. It's always really, I'm trying to find a right way to put this. Like he was an artist that really meant a lot to me, and he meant a lot to me during a very important time for myself as a fan. I'm so sad that I never ever got to talk to the guy, like not even on the podcast, just to like talk to him, because he just sounds like such a great guy. And I don't know. It's a bummer. He will be missed. And thank you for chatting about him, because, I mean...
And I hope appreciated. I think it happens to some artists when they get really, really big. People kind of tune out sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, like I said about JP, he was always considered an artist and will always be considered that. When some people become very successful, people kind of like don't really appreciate them anymore. But I don't know. I know I'm certainly... It's been a moment for me to kind of take a step back and kind of really... not that I'm like, I never liked him or anything. I clearly did. I just... I forgot how much he really kind of had an effect on me. And yeah, it sucks, man. But like, I don't know, I try to put a positive spin on it, and so many amazing bodies of work that he's done are out there. So
I hadn't realized how much of an influence he was. When you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, no, I can see it. It's like, oh, character. Well, if I'm like being the physician, like I used to kind of go with some of his stuff. I'm like, oh, there's a character standing in the middle of a cover, but I absolutely do that. So I have no way. I don't have a leg to stand on, you know.
Well, unfortunately for you, have many legs to stand on because you got too much damn stuff to do, Declan. But that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about everything you have going on. Old Dog, Mystique, Thundercats. I almost said Thunderbolts because you said Thunderbolts earlier. Terminator, and everything else. I really appreciate you taking the time.
I know, if I can just say one thing about Mystique, just a little peek behind the curtain. The first issue has been sent around to all the people in X-Men, and Jed MacKay said, "Woof, geez, that goes hard." So I'm really hoping we can get that on the book, but just in case we can't, I want that on the record that Jed said that.
That should be a pull quote. I like it.
Yeah, I'm asking. Can we make that a pull quote? Thanks a million, Dave. Thanks as always for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with writer-artist Declan Shalvey. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram, and his work in Thundercats and Old Dog, and the upcoming Old Dog operations, Mystique and Terminator. Big thanks to Deanna Chapman for stepping in to edit this episode. If it sounds better than usual, it's because of her. Love Off Panel, want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating and review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing it on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel. And when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast, as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my Eisner Award nominated subscription comic site Sketched at sketch.com for long form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by following on Twitter and Instagram at @SketchComic or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Milton Lawson, David Wilson, Joe, Benjamin Wilkins, Chris Hacker, John Neesmith, John Auerbach, Dustin Weaver, Ninja Assassin Love Story Webcomic, David Byrne, Brandon Heyman, Aiden Hammond, Kenny Myers, Faith Aaron Hicks, Yeah Comics, Ben Rowe, Cameron Brown, Jonathan Breen, Danny Ollie, Charlie Stickney, Tom Drennan, Jeremy Thomas Burke, Jared Schwab, Scott Dunn, Chip Mosher, Seth Pomeroy, James McEwen, Andrew Lehman, Christina Merkler, Scott Place, Travis Gibb, Darcy Van Polgees, Tom Evans, Reed Beeman, Kelly Sudaconic, Max Wood, Jeremy Lambert, Brian Holt, Near Levy, Jason Hussa, Kieran Gillen, Jonathan Kent Uratam, Henry Johnson, Jingo Boren, James Tynan IV, Chris Langford, Jason Wood, Tom Peachy, Ben Domstead, Rom V, Nick Walker, Patrick Coyle, Isaac Oren, Capes and Tights Podcast, Klaus Vandeven, Submen Industries, Jack Mulqueen, Carl Kerschel, Robert Masella, Elza Chartier, Luke Nakashoji, Dr. Luke, Scott Hazelwood, Canadian by Proxy, Bradley Rader, Carl Choi, Brandon Pills, Patrick Bauer, Declan Shalvey, Dan Gurino, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, Liana Kangas, Nick Bennett, Daniel Whitfield, Susanna Polo, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, Andrew Carita, Stephen Holt, Philip Myra, Chris Pachalo, Torrin Grunbeck, Buzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Akil Wilson, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwan, Vita Yala, Akil, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, David Kelly, Nick Polito, Jason Assey, Adam Bogart, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendrick, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Colin McMahon, Adam Heifel, Fiona Staples, Mark Abnett, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks from Wolfpack for letting me use their song Outro as the show's opening theme, and to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's outro and ad music just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.